All too often, we get so caught up in hustle culture and the stories that we tell ourselves that we make ourselves sick and we pull ourselves out of alignment. Join me this week as I sit down with the beautiful Carissa Karban and we talk about giving ourselves grace, how important that is to live an aligned and heart-centered life, and how you can begin to do that one step at a time. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an East Asian medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women to live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering holistic solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I'm so excited to be joined once again by the amazing Carissa Karban. Welcome back to the show, Carissa.
Adrienne, I'm so excited to be back on. Thanks for having me.
So Carissa and I have totally hit it off, and we feel like we could do episode after episode. So stay tuned, folks, because we may have way more of these, because I feel like we have a lot of really juicy conversations. So if you have missed our previous conversation, make sure to go back and check out episode 31, which aired in August. And we talked about how Carissa came to the work that she's doing, this beautiful work that she's doing with the Heal Collective, how to get a hold of the Heal Collective. So wicked awesome episode. Please go check it out, everybody. And one of the things that came out of one of our awesome conversations ahead of this recording was this concept of giving ourselves grace. And I feel like it really dovetails beautifully and is a beautiful continuation to the conversation that we had in our last episode. So I wanted to have Carissa back and take a little deeper dive into the steps that she's taken to get to where she is now. She talked about being in her rewilding era. So I would love for you to share with everybody what that all means.
So juicy. Thanks, Adrienne. Starting off with rewilding, I think it's a term that I'm really grateful to see popping up in different spaces. I think rewilding the feminine, going from, let's say, the very demure, very mindful version of the feminine, right? Where we're meant to be these nurturers, but kind of behind the scenes nurturers. For me, rewilding is this idea of becoming feral, if you will. It's letting our hair down. It's reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with our cycle, with the phases of the moon, and really tapping into the raw, authentic power of the divine, wild feminine. And so for me, that has been really liberating in terms of honestly bringing parts of myself out of the shadow that I either have hidden for a long time or some who have never even seen the light of day, whether it's like a sexual revolution, whether it's just confidence in myself, owning every single part of myself and really integrating every part of me that I shunned into the shadow and the unconscious at some point.
Oh, I love that. Parts of me that maybe haven't even seen the sun yet. Oh, I resonate with that. I feel that deeply. Reproductive Rebel came out of one of those spaces because I spent so much time trying to be perfect and trying to be the good girl and trying to create this idea of a perfect person that was totally unachievable. I made myself sick trying to achieve and totally fell out of alignment to bring forth into the world. And for a while, I wondered if my rewilding. I love that term. And the way you described it is exactly the way that I feel now, where I took it as just getting old and comfortable in my old age at one point because I gave way less of a crap what anybody thought. And I was like, you know what? My vibe is going to attract my tribe. And the people that I'm meant to connect with are going to find me. And that's
Mhm.
okay. And that is totally that feminine energy, that receptive feminine energy.
Totally. But I think what's really important to understand is I don't think it's a natural consequence of getting older, right? I think it's the work because you think about, especially in the US and mainstream culture, think about how many women are terrified of getting older because we're trying to conform to someone else's idea of perfection. We like to say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I say perfection is in the eye of the beholder. And that's why it's such a losing battle because even if you think you're perfect to yourself or to someone else, every single person's definition of what perfect is going to be different. And so you're inevitably going to come up short if you're always striving for someone else's version of perfection. But I think about all the women I see who are aging and doing no judgment if doing treatments is your thing, if that feels good to you and helps you feel confident. But I see so many women who use like Botox, lip injections, like all of these things to try to mask their beautiful aging beauty, dyeing hair, all of these things. And again, if you feel more natural as, let's say, a blonde versus a brunette, like you do you, girlfriend. But I think there's so much of it that is really rooted in I need to hide, I need to strive to be something else or be someone else. And so I think the rewilding is like, yeah, let that natural hair down and just allow yourself to see how incredibly beautiful you are just as you are.
Oh, I love that. And you're starting to see it more in mainstream culture. Now, it's
Yes.
fledgling, but you are starting to see it more in mainstream culture. I feel like Jamie Lee Curtis is like, I've always thought she's beautiful, but like, I think she just keeps getting better as she gets older. And she's completely unapologetic about, I am aging. This is what I look like aging. And she doesn't do anything to manufacture another version of who she is. And I've always admired that about her.
And how powerful and how sexy is that, where it's like, oh, it actually doesn't matter how many wrinkles you have on your face. What matters is the light, the energy that you're exuding, the confidence that's coming from behind your skin. And you say, that's magnetic. I want to get closer to that. Tell me how you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you had talked a little bit about like the way that culture creates this beauty and
The eye of the beholder. Yes.
thank you, beauty being in the eye of the beholder. And it's like this proof of self-worth, right? I have to prove that I'm worthy of your love. I have to prove that I'm worthy of this job. I have to prove that right? And whether it's the way that we look on the outside or the way that our light shines from the inside, when you're rewilding, it's coming from that vulnerable authenticity deep down inside of you, that light that you came
Mm,
into this world with, that you're just going to shine for others to see.
yes.
And there's such a big disconnect in like being in touch with that light versus what we think we have to do to keep up with the Joneses.
Yes. Oh my gosh. When I was really struggling with depression and I was in like very like the depths of my darkness, I remember really feeling and believing that I had to earn my oxygen. That was what it really came down to. It felt like that prove culture, that hustling. It was like, I don't deserve to simply be. I must do, I must have, I must go out and achieve in order to be worthy of just being here and breathing oxygen. And so, yeah, I think the radical acceptance, giving ourselves grace and coming into the recognition, the remembering, not learning for the first time, but truly the remembering that we're here for a reason and we are incredibly whole and beautiful just as we are.
Oh, I love that because that dovetails with something I do with my clients quite a lot. And I ask them, what brought you joy as a kid? like
Mhm.
before the world got a hold of you
Yes.
and told you had to be a certain way, look a certain way, act a certain way. And one of my mentors talks about when she was a child and she was like the queen of mud pies. And she got so much light and joy and enthusiasm for everything from digging herself through the mud. And she has very long blonde hair. And she said she had long blonde hair as a kid and it would be like caked, like halfway up because she was just so into what she was doing. But that's what made her happy. Right. And there are so many things. Like, if we think back to the way that we were as little kids, what brought us joy? And I remember as a kid, I had these rock tumbling was a big thing when I was a kid because,
Heck yeah.
I'm not old at this point, but I had a rock tumbler. I'm not ashamed to admit that. And one of the things that I used to carry around in my pocket is I had rock tumbled amethyst. Little did I know that that was really potent for me energetically. But as a kid, this was literally my prized possession. I would go nowhere without these four little rock tumbled stones in my pocket, in my backpack. It didn't matter. They went with me everywhere. And they just felt aligned to me. They felt good to
Mhm.
me. And I was so proud of them. I'm taking them out on show people. People thought I was nuts, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
Right. Until the world started to get a hold of me. And ooh, this is kind of weird. Right. So here I am in college. And it's been many moons since my little rock tumble stones came with me anywhere. And one of my girlfriends was like, I want to let you in on a little secret. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I do work with crystals. Is that weird? And I'm like, what do you mean? And I was really curious. And so she explained like how this was energetically part of her life, how a lot of it was used in a very reverent way. And she wanted to share it with me because she felt like I was the one friend that wasn't going to judge her. And
Mm.
being offbeat like I am, I was like, this is so cool. I'm going to tell you the story of these little stones that used to walk around with me everywhere. And when I went home to do laundry that weekend, I went and found my little stones and I brought them back with me because I felt like, oh, somebody who gets me. And I didn't feel like I had to do a performance for anyone else.
That judgment. Yeah, that judgment, right? And that's where I think for me, that really ties so heavily into giving ourselves grace because for me, giving ourselves grace is not just about embracing the version of you that loved to carry those rocks around. It's also about embracing the version of you that judged that other version of you, right?
Yes.
Because you were taking in conditioning, programming from the world around you to understand, how do I create safety? How do I create belonging? How do I get love in this world? And so, really having gratitude and grace for the version of you that tucked the other version of you behind, because at some point she said, I'm going to protect you because it's not safe for this little stone carrying version of you to be out in the world. I don't want you to be shunned. I don't want you to be judged. So I'm going to be the shield for you. And so I think that is so important because we can often vilify that version of us. And so I think it's so important to give that grace and gratitude and then say, and now you can take a seat because now the stone carrying version is coming out to play again.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, as we're talking about giving ourselves grace, Brene Brown says really eloquently, and I might butcher her quote a little bit, but she talks about how authenticity is courage and strength,
Mm,
and it's not the weakness that we have been conditioned to believe that it is. And I used my little rock tumble story because I was afraid of being authentic because it meant that my heart was exposed. How many of us create masks and faces around aging, our work, anything that we're doing in our life to protect that soft heart that we have within?
mm. Yes. Oh my gosh. That is so much of my work has been, yeah, dismantling the armor to let this like soft little heart shine forward. It's a big but soft heart. And Yeah, it can feel very vulnerable, right? It can feel like every judgment, every glance, every comment is an arrow that's piercing that heart. And so we put on that armor to protect ourselves. It doesn't feel safe.
How do you feel that your heart focused knowing and your heart led work has transformed the way that you work today?
Mm. It has transformed everything. It has transformed how I think, how I feel, what I see, how I see the world, the relationships I have, the work that I do. It has been everything because I no longer go out into the world looking for safety, looking for love, looking for validation, because I've learned how to give all of that to myself. And that doesn't mean that I go into every single scenario with my heart equally forward and open, because as I've cultivated the relationship with my body, with my intuition, that's where it's like I'm not all zen and, oh, heart forward all of the time, no matter what happens, because it is soft. My heart is soft, but it's about discernment. It's about being able to energetically read another person and say, ooh, this person is not safe. They do not deserve, they do not get to experience my soft heart, because they're projecting or they're maybe more toxic or they're just, for whatever reason, they're not a safe person for me. And so it's really this discernment but I've changed the equation. So instead of saying, I'm going to hold the armor around my heart until you prove to me that you're safe, instead, it's really the flip of, I'm going to be heart forward and heart open until I feel that it's not safe. And then I'm going to close off. And that has made a big difference.
Yes, I can see how that flip in the frame can absolutely shift not only the energy that you engage with, but also the compassion
Mm.
that, and essentially the unconditional love that you can hold for that other person.
Totally. And it all started with practicing unconditional love for myself and all parts of myself, because I think that's where I truly believe that every single person is a mirror, right? Like we're walking around as like prisms where you're reflecting things to me, I'm reflecting things to you. And ultimately, if I feel, let's say I feel that you're judging me, maybe in this particular exchange, I know, okay, it doesn't feel safe to have my heart forward. But then when I get out of that situation, I get to a place of safety. I can reflect. What is it that made me feel judged? What part of myself might I be judging that felt that she couldn't come out and play? She wasn't safe. And so it really has been this practice of unconditional love and taking radical responsibility for the thoughts and the experiences that I have, because I'm not a victim to your judgment. Like, even if you are judging me, right? Totally fine. But that really has nothing to do with me, because we're all filtering the world through our own lens and our own perspective. But if I feel judged, then I know that's an invitation for me to go love some part of myself even more.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So let's tie this into this sisterhood wound that
Mm,
we have.
mm,
It's a big one because the world has really kind of pit one against the other and not allowed for us to show up in that supportive sisterhood way, because there's a competition there for self-worth, right? Instead of a rising tide lifts all boats.
yeah, I love that so much, because I think what you said, the competition, right? It's all rooted in scarcity.
Mm.
So we live in a world that tries to make us believe that everything is scarce, because in scarcity, then you foster competition, you foster this zero sum game of, well, if I have the resource, that means there's less for you. And instead, when we can flip scarcity into abundance and realize we have everything we need, just as a very simple example, I'll say different tastes in food, right? If you love pizza and I don't like pizza, somehow, like, I don't like cilantro. That's my toxic trait, is I don't like cilantro. And I've encountered so many people who are like, how can you not like cilantro? I can't believe that. It's so delicious. And I just always say, well, now there's more for you. So, like, what are you worried about? And so I think this idea of like monoculture, if you look at agriculture today, how we grow fields of like only corn, only soybeans, right? Whereas if you look at like indigenous wisdom and how they grow things, it's really about growing things together that complement each other. Because let's say you have beans that can put nitrogen back into the oxygen. And then you have corn that can grow tall for the beans to curl around and to grow on. And then you have squash that provides the ground cover for these other things. But when you have all corn in a field, they all need the same nutrients, the same resources, and they start leaching it from the earth until you have to let the field lay fallow because you can't grow anything because you've leached it of all the same nutrients. And I look at that as a fractal of our culture. We try to create this culture of everyone needs to have the same things and look the same way and all the keeping up with the Joneses, like you said earlier. Whereas if we can instead embrace our wild, unique, feminine nature, then we can learn to complement each other and to celebrate each other because we're not the same.
I love that. Just before we hit record, you were talking about how rewilding has played such a huge role in your day to day and some of the current goings on and transitions in your own life. Speak to that just a little bit, because that was really fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. Coming from this hustle culture, being in corporate for over a decade, being in consulting, especially always on a plane and traveling, and the consulting firm I worked for, they stated in the expectations that we needed to be available from like 6 a.m. our time to 8 p.m. And there were just a lot of long hours. And this year, I have started two businesses. I've just relocated across the country. I started a new partnership, and I've had these stories coming up of like, oh, I need to be working more. I need to be doing more. But I, luckily, because I've checked out of that hustle culture, because I know that I'm worthy and I'm amazing just as I am, I can catch those stories before I attach to them, before they influence my behavior. I can say, oh, let's interrupt that. Let's pump the brakes for just a minute and slow down. And then I get curious, right? Where is the story coming from? What's making me believe this? And ultimately, because of this rewilding era, I know that I'm at my best when I move slow, when I take my time, when I do my rituals and my practices, my meditation, my breath work, my body movement, when I get into the little things that bring me joy, right? Whether it's the mud pies or putting my toes in the sand and playing on the beach, anything like this, journaling. I have so many things that really fill my heart. And so it's really for me now about quality over quantity. So rather than subscribing to that scarcity of time, right? Talking about scarcity, instead of subscribing to scarcity of time, it's, oh, this will all get done, right? If my energy is moving in this direction, if I feel that I want to put in a few more hours of work, I can. But if I'm feeling really drained, I give myself grace to say, okay, let's shut the laptop. Let's go do something else. Let's go for a walk. Let's get out in nature, whatever it is. Because the other part of it is that balance between action and surrender. And so it's like I'm taking the action that's mine to take, but I also know that I'm held, that what is meant for me will be for me. There's no way around it, right? The things that aren't meant for me won't come for me, and the things that are must inevitably come for me. And so there's a really deep trust and surrender into moving at a much slower pace and just allowing things to unfold, allowing myself to energetically attract things into my life. So even though I have two businesses, I'm working maybe 15, 20 hours a week right now. And that feels really good. And that feels very counter to how I would have told you needed to work in order to make a business successful a few years ago.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, you hit so many good things. Hopefully, I can tease them all out appropriately, because that hits on so many pain points for so many clients that I talk to. And I'm also guilty of this. Okay, so I talk about all of these things on the show, but please, nobody listening think that I have all this shit figured out and that I do not struggle with these things. There was an episode last season that I did with Angela Castrino, and we had talked about, I want to say it's episode 7. We talked about a woman's worth and how we feel like we have to justify our worth with productivity and how much we're doing. And even on our day off, she gave the example of I had bustled around the house and I had cleaned and I had done this and I had meal prepped and I blah, 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 blah. I went through the whole list of things. And she said, and the 1 second I sat down on the couch after doing this laundry list of things, my partner walked through the door and I instantly felt guilty and I felt shame around the fact that he caught me not moving. And that's so deeply ingrained and internalized. And that speaks to what you were just saying. Like, that's not what I would have told you in the near history that would have made you successful. And I deeply resonate with what you said. Like, I very much grew up in this push grind. You have to prove your worth. You have to work hard in order to get the things that you want. And it's not even working hard, it's working smart, it's working aligned. Yes, it's not exceeding the energy that you have on board. And when I used to push, I might have been 15 years younger, but I was so much sicker because I was using more than what I had on board for energy. And I wasn't producing my best work because I wasn't giving myself the space to be creative. Like, I had this project that I was working on probably 4 years ago now, and I really wanted to bring it into the world. It felt like that on the tip of your tongue kind of thing. And I kept trying to force it because I'm like, oh, I have this deadline and I just have to get this done. And my husband goes, are we going to ever go tubing down the river or not? And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I am done for the day. I closed my laptop. I moved on, put on my bathing suit. We got into the tube. We start this lazy float down the river. And we got halfway, and all of a sudden, what I was looking for dropped into my head. And I was like, shit, I got to get onto this tube right now because I'm going to forget all this stuff. This is awesome. Right. But I had to create the space.
Yep.
That's how the feminine works. So I love what you said about I'm working 15 to 20 hours. I'm running 2 businesses and I'm living my best life. This is possible, folks. This is why I wanted to talk about rewilding as a concept and giving ourselves grace. Because, like I talked about in that episode with Angela, we talked about the shame and guilt that come up when we're not moving, doing, or hustling or grinding enough. And then, like, for anybody who's a mother, let's add motherhood and like the martyrdom that comes along with not doing enough, being enough, having a Pinterest clean house, like all these kinds of things and expectations on top of it. And it pulls us out of center and out of that aligned place where we can do our best mothering. We can go outside and play with our kids. And we can be our best employer or employee or creatrix in whatever way that you're bringing things into the world. When we're allowed to have that space, it's like people who are on their conception journeys, they're all like focused on like data and tests and this and that and the other thing. And 9 times out of 10, they end up going on a vacation, and that's when they get pregnant because they're playing and they have space. And now a word from our Reproductive Rebel sponsor, Embody Space. Your cycle holds wisdom, and the Embody Space cycle tracking app helps you unlock it. Track your cycle in the only fully encrypted app designed to protect your most sacred data. Get daily guidance tailored to every phase, from bleeding to blooming, with rituals, herbs, lifestyle tips, dietary support, and more. All tailored for your body's natural rhythms, because your body's story is yours alone. Embody Space, your private portal to cycle wisdom. Download now and reclaim your rhythm. And now, back to the show.
And their system can regulate, right? Like, think about like how dysregulated we are if we constantly feel like we're not enough. That can feel like the example you used, right? With your partner coming in and you feel guilty for having stopped. To your brain, that feels like a predator coming in, right? To attack your worthiness. And so if we're constantly in this belief, embodying this belief that we're not good enough, we have to constantly be going and moving and doing, our body never feels safe to relax, to get into that parasympathetic state, to rest and digest, to be creative, to conceive a baby. Because if you're running from a tiger, that's not the right time to get pregnant.
Yes. And with hustle culture, and it's such a hard place to be because you feel like you have to produce. But like this getting pregnant thing is another element of producing. And then when you can't, there are stories that we tell ourselves, and that inner critic is a nasty person sometimes and feeds that narrative of you're not doing enough, you aren't enough, you have to prove you're worthy, all of these things. And I just love how you talk about I am being successful through surrender and allowing and alignment rather than push, grind, all of these like action oriented masculine energy kinds of words that as women we can open and allow and surrender and receive, which if you think about how our bodies are built, we're built to receive, that you can call in what it is that's meant to find you.
Yes. And I think about too, in that I think there's such a beautiful nugget there of the trade-offs that we make between today and tomorrow, right? A lot of the hustling and a lot of the doing and the producing is like, I'm doing this to get to something. And when I get to the other side of whatever it is, insert whatever thing, then I'll have the time to relax, to feel good. Then I'll feel worthy. And it really comes to flipping that script, because I have an experience of that with my ex where I traded off a lot of present day joy, happiness, fulfillment for the promise of some hypothetical future that ultimately got taken away from me. It was no longer an option on the table. And I thought, how much joy did I trade off today for some hypothetical promise of tomorrow that we're not actually guaranteed? And so I think that you said it so beautifully of like, if we can operate aligned within our capacity, even when I'm working, I feel so much joy. I feel so much creativity. I feel so much excitement. I'm not even worried about the future because today is so beautiful.
I love that. Do you find in working in this aligned way that sometimes you have to actually like curb your enthusiasm because you do find so much joy in what you're doing and it's just like flowing from you and you're like, oof, I got to pace myself?
Not really. I think because I've cultivated the capacity for intense enthusiasm and emotions, I think that's a big piece of it. Because I want to caveat that to say, when I first started feeling my emotions in my body about 5, 6 years ago, if you had flipped a switch and that taken me from there to here, I would have been completely overwhelmed. I would have had no idea how to handle what I was feeling, how to channel, how to flow, how to receive, even just hard stop with receiving because I didn't think I deserved to receive, right? Which is a huge thing as well. And so for me, it's about the incremental and sometimes quantum leaps, but really looking at the incremental shifts, the incremental increase in capacity, instead of someone listening saying, oh, I need to quit my job and go to only working 15 hours a week. That's how I create happiness and fulfillment. No, that's my version of happiness, of joy, of fulfillment. But it also took me years to get here. And so it's really about carving out, I call them the wedges, right? Where we insert the wedge in here of like 5, 10, 15 minutes of giving myself permission to be who I am, to do what I want. And then we slowly start to widen that wedge over time. Because if we just flip a switch and we change everything overnight, that's not sustainable. Our nervous system is going to feel incredibly dysregulated and unsafe in that. So what can we do? So for me, in going back to that comment of giving myself grace, loving myself, accepting myself, I have nurtured my way into this capacity.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's really important too, because what makes somebody feel complete and aligned is different for everybody.
Thank
So,
goodness.
right? All the colors of the spectrum. So, I don't know how much you know about human design, but I'm a projector.
Projector, baby.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so for the longest time, I thought there was something fundamentally flawed with me. And if you don't know what I'm talking about in human design, I did an episode with Joe Visser earlier this season. Please go back and see that amazing episode that aired in April. She explains everything that I'm talking about. But as a projector, I always felt like I couldn't keep up with everybody. And I would burn out so easy. And so, like,
Yep.
everything just felt like this huge uphill slog. And one of the gifts of being a projector, which for the longest time I thought was something quote unquote wrong with me, because I would work for manifestors, manifesting generators, like they were like Energizer bunnies and they would just go all the time. And I would get so tired, like physically tired, emotionally tired. And as a projector and learning this about myself, I was like, oh, I need space to do my best work. I need rest to do my best work. I can do more in a 4 hour period of time than most people can do in 8, but you also have to let me have a slower start to my day.
Preach. Oh my gosh. I am a fellow projector. Everything you said resonates so, so, so deeply. And that's exactly it. And I think the other part too is as I've done the work to accept that and celebrate that in myself, what's really beautiful is now calling in collaborators and business partners who understand that. My co-founder in the AI video game that I'm working on right now, he calls me the frequency holder. So while he's hustling and putting in a lot of hours, doing a lot of back end development, I had a conversation with him because I was feeling some of those stories come up where I was like, am I in the right role? Am I really supporting you? Am I showing up in the ways that you want? He was like, I don't want you to hustle because you're the one who brings the magic. You're the one who helps elevate everything in the perspective of the project. And so if you need a slow start to your day, if you need like 2 to 3 hours to meditate, get grounded, set your intention for the day, and then you come in for those 3 or 4 hours and we're rocking and rolling, let's do that because I don't want to suck you dry. But that's where it comes from, this idea of pouring into my cup so that it can overflow rather than me trying to empty my cup into all of these things.
Oh, I love that. And that's how it feels. That's totally how it feels. I love that you're a fellow projector. I knew I loved you, but that's what it is. Like, I feel so creative and so full of like joy and enthusiasm, and like the sky is the limit of the things that I can contribute and the frequency that I can share with others when I take that time in the morning. And it really is the morning. Like before my son came into the picture, I had this whole meditation journaling. I did some movement. I'd get outside on my porch, like all that kind of stuff, because I just needed those things. Not because I wasn't awake and clear headed either. It wasn't like a groggy start, it was an intention setting start for the day. And then the world would slowly start to creep in. And now that my son is here and he is 6 months old and he is amazing and he's magic in and of himself, my slows start with him and
Mm.
talking with him, and he coos and interacts with me and does the things, right? And I love and I savor those mornings with him because it's my time to have that really intimate connection with him. And there's play and it's still creative, and it's a form of meditative being and being embodied. And it's as rich for him as it is for me. And it still gives me the juice that I need, right? That filling of my cup in order to be able to pour forth. And when I don't get that time, ask my husband, I'm a little cranky because I've realized I need it so much in order to be able to show up in all the best ways in the world.
Yeah. The way I think about it is when I start my day practicing loving myself, it's so much easier to love everybody else in the world. If I don't do that because I'm buying into some story or I'm hustling or I feel unworthy of taking that time and giving myself permission to do that, then that's how, for me, the judgment, the resentment can creep in of like, wait a second, why do you get my love and I don't get my love? So really like pouring into our own cup and allowing it to like pour over into others also lets me loosen any sort of attachment or expectation on what others are giving to me because I know that I'm giving to myself exactly what I need.
I love that. I love that. It's nourishing. It's that put your own oxygen mask on before you do that for others. And so many people struggle with that because they're like, oh, that feels so selfish. If you demonstrate for those around you, whether you have kids or not, but I really think about it a lot because I'm trying to model these behaviors for my kids and I homeschool. And there was a period of time where I was having them start the day with yoga.
Mm.
And then we got to more of that teenage stage and they thought mom was lame. But when they were doing it, their grades were better. Their ability to sit and focus was better. They asked more dynamic questions. They were more engaged with what it was that they were doing. Like it just was nourishing to have a movement practice, an intention setting practice for the day, but they see me do these things. I had them do these things. Like I feel like it's modeling the kinds of healthy behaviors that so many of us didn't see. We glorify that empty stomach cup of coffee in the car on the way to doing all the things in the drop off line at school and so on and so forth. And just think about all the TikToks and reels of the harried, frazzled commute into work and all the people that talk about the fact that none of this feels good to them.
And I love that you brought that up of like, this feels selfish. And like, think about how you're showing up, not only for yourself, but also for others, right? Let's say you're a leader in let's say a job. If you're showing up in that empty stomach, cup of coffee, frazzled, harried, you're not showing up as the best leader that you can show up as. You're not showing up as the best employee because you're not grounded, you're not regulated, you're not clear headed. And so I view all of these practices. It took me a long time to get here. So I want to use that caveat as well, because I was that person on the black coffee doing all of these things because I thought someone was going to give me the champion gold star of worthiness if I did all of these things. But as I've unlearned that, I see so much more how generous, how patient, how loving I can be with my partner, my friends, colleagues, you name it. So pouring into myself and giving myself permission to love and honor the rituals, the practices, whatever it is that I need and want in a day is the most beautiful act of generosity I can think of.
I love that. So, if you were to suggest to our listeners how you would get started in a small but impactful way to get back in touch with themselves, because so many of us get lost in this hustle culture and not being able to give ourselves grace for getting caught up in all of that, right there. I know that there are people listening to this going, oh, that sounds so nice, but I just can't do that. And oh, that feels like so much. And of course, everything, it's just like when you tackle any task when you're tired, it just feels like this big, huge uphill slog.
Which we usually are when we don't give ourselves permission to sleep.
Exactly. Exactly. So I know that there are probably at least a few of you listening, and that there is no shame in that. I'm just recognizing and witnessing where you're at.
Because I've been there. I've been that version of me, right? And I love that question. And I think what's really interesting is you'll hear a lot of people who will say, like, go meditate, do yoga, do journaling, all of that, get better sleep. And I actually won't recommend that because we know all of these tactics. And if it was that easy, we'd all be doing them. And so what I would actually recommend is an invitation of curiosity. So whenever we have those stories come up, like exactly what you just said, must be nice, but that doesn't work for me. Pause in that. Why not? right? What makes me think that won't work for me? Or where did this story come from? Who made me believe that I needed to do XYZ in order to fit in, belong, find love, whatever it is? So there is a necessary slowing down in order to interrupt the pattern. But rather than sort of, I'll say like gaslight affirmation our way through this thing of like, oh, I'm worthy, and what we actually secretly know in the back of our head that we don't believe it, instead of just forcing ourselves to keep repeating the mantra or the affirmation, if we can pause and get curious, it's really hard for curiosity and judgment to coexist. So if we can say, I've been saying this story to myself a lot. What makes me believe that's true? Byron Katie has some really great work. She has like 4 specific questions that she walks people through in terms of like, is it absolutely true? You know, a way to verify this. And so some practice of curiosity, I think, can be really great for interrupting the pattern. And after we get curious about where this pattern came from or where this story or belief came from, then we can now use curiosity to say, what might be different if I tried going out for a walk for 5 minutes in the morning? It doesn't have to be a 2-hour practice that we start. What might be different, right? And just getting curious and giving ourselves that permission to be curious and to explore and to play with it and see what happens.
I love that. I love that. And you have to start with baby steps, because we're talking about creating a new way of moving through the world. This isn't like a fad diet. This isn't a fly by night trend. This is creating a meaningful foundation in your life so that you can thrive. And it really is one step at a time. And I love this piece that you were talking about around curiosity. I had this program called Rebel Remembered, and we actually dive into a lot of topics like this so that I can create a container for people to have these kinds of conversations and ask some of those questions and tease out some of those answers, because it's hard to do some of that self-discovery and that discernment in being curious. Sometimes the answers are really hard for us to face. Sometimes those answers are really hard to stomach. And then we find ourselves judging our experience, our lived experience. So that's actually totally why I created Rebel Remember, to be able to tease some of this out, because these things sit at the root of a lot of our reproductive health problems, because they're physical manifestations of storylines that we have stuffed inside of our body, and we've told ourselves we're not worthy, we're not enough, we judge ourselves. The way that we judge other people usually is a mirror reflecting back to us where we don't feel up to par or worthy, or where we're self-conscious, and so on and so forth. So I love what you said about being able to start this at the level of curiosity, because it opens your heart and it opens your mind to looking at narratives that have been playing often our whole lifetime.
Yep. But it is hard. I love that invitation, right, to grace, right, that you just gave. It's an invitation to grace to say, yeah, it can be hard. It can feel hard to get the answer to the question that you're asking. And the judgment that might come in for our experience or for that version of us. I just want to reiterate, like, everybody is beautiful. Everybody is divinely perfect. And there's a reason, right, behind the story. There's a protection mechanism or something that came up in your past that you are being protected from, and your body and your brain are doing the absolute best that they can. So grace, curiosity, and honestly, just experimenting and playing with it, I think is so powerful.
I love that. And it's important to know that when your body is trying to protect you from something, it's because it loves you.
Yes.
It's not that your body is out to get you. Your body's not betraying you. It's not a war between you and your body. Your body is brilliant. And
there doesn't need to be a war. We can say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but I hear my clients.
I was at war with my body for a long time.
Oh, me too, sister. Sing it.
So I'm just saying there doesn't need to be a war, right? We can develop a beautiful partnership. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it really does start with these kernels that you put forward. So thank you so much for sharing your lived experience and your wisdom, because I think this is a really powerful topic for a lot of people. And yes, this is a women's health focused show, but I feel like this is a much bigger conversation than just that, because we have a lot of toxic masculinity in the culture. We have a lot of creating expectations and socializing everybody to a benchmark that just isn't healthy, achievable, realistic, and it comes from scarcity, which you so beautifully said earlier. So, if you were to leave our listeners with a final gem, what
Mm.
would that be?
You are lovable, you are worthy, and you are so beautiful. And even if it's hard to believe in this moment, I invite you and hope that you will allow that to sink in, allow that to take root, that remembering and that knowing, because it's so true.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and your wisdom yet again. I love having you on. We might have to do this again.
Let's do it. Adrienne, I love you so much. And I love you sharing your stories as well. That's really, I think, the strength and the power of this community is us taking off the masks, being real about our experience, and letting people know they're not alone in it.
Absolutely. That's one of my deepest hopes for this show, is that people find that courage to remove the mask and know that they're beautiful the way that they are, they're safe, they're held, and really the sky is the limit for whatever feels aligned to them.
And you're beautifully role modeling that and embodying it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you all so much for joining my conversation with Carissa. I will have information to contact her and her beautiful initiatives in the show notes. And until next time. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at MoonEssenceMe on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.